Irish wristwatch. Irish wrist. Seriously, why is this so hard to say? Like, and I know some of you are going right to the comments being like, I can say it 5 times fast with ease. Well, congratulations. Pronunciation is not that easy for everyone, especially a natural mumbler as myself. It's taken dedication and years of self-guided effort to not mumble, and I still do it sometimes. Many people are often resistant, if not outright hostile, to the idea that they have to correct their pronunciation or clear up any speaking habits or clean up their accent. And why is that? Well, I understood me, you understood yourself. Why aren't they listening? They just need to open up their... Wait, we're here for a reason. Welcome to TMF Debates Part 2 on the debate of should you correct someone's grammar? See? Speaking isn't that easy, but we've done the research to know what these two sides are talking about, and now we need to get them to a middle ground. But does one even exist? While researching this episode, I found that the 3 major crossroads are: what is even proper grammar? Does improper grammar devalue your opinion? And when should you correct another person's grammar? If at any point you hear anything you agree or disagree with, please join the debate in the comments section down below. Now, before we get into the first crossroad, we have to address an elephant in the room, and that is the idea that proper grammar is actually racist and classist. If you're unaware of American history, it took a long time before anyone besides Caucasians were allowed to attend higher education. And it wasn't until 1799 when John Chavis, a Presbyterian minister, became the first African-American male to attend a college in Virginia. But it wasn't until 1823 when Lucius Twilight became the first African-American to graduate from one of these colleges, which is awesome. And we wouldn't be where we are without these 2 historical men. However, from then and many years before, the white, wealthy, elite class were the only ones attending higher education. Anti uses this period of history to assert that proper English dialogue is forever associated with rich, wealthy, white upper class. Looking at America in general, however, this still seems to be the case in some places, because even with the poorest of white families, there's probably a good chance that 1 or 2 of them are gonna be a college graduate, even if it's just a community college. While many of the minority families in America, they're still waiting for that first member to graduate from a college. It's no mystery to why proper English found its place in the academic world, because it aids so much in coherency, especially when a lot of academics are in the written form. When you're speaking, even if you speak in improper grammar, you more than likely were going to use proper grammar when writing. And so academics, with all of the writing and the papers and the books that they publish, it makes sense that they would lean more towards the proper than the improper. For pro to get through this crossroad, they're going to need to admit that intent matters. If they're going to correct anyone and everyone, see, mistakes are easy. Pro is going to need to admit that if they do not reflect on what their intent is for correction, that they could inadvertently be actually promoting a racist and classist society like Anti says they are. It is hard to blame pro, however, as in the academic field, mastering English is essential to your own credibility. One misused Oxford comma could result in public humiliation in Oxford. Other common mistakes include people using the wrong has, had, or have in conversation. You are often hard-pressed to literally find someone that knows the difference between literally and figuratively. Those on the anti like to argue that not only are these rules restrictive, but they're unnecessary in day-to-day communication, because you can generally understand what somebody has to say without them using proper grammar. For example, the word be, B-E. This word is overused in many dialects that are found in African American communities in southern states. Them be some big ears is a statement that you could likely hear used in one of these dialects. The proper statement would be close to you have abnormally large ears. In both cases, the message of bigger than normal ears is communicated. However, you're likely to look at these two sentences and judge one as more educated than the other. We'll address more why this is the case in the second crossroad, but for now, just know that proper grammar is linked inadvertently and subconsciously to higher education. Does spoken improper English really detract that much from our message? In the first crossroad, we showed how proper grammar has been long associated with the educated elite, and it is easy in the written form to see someone misspell a word and then just discredit the entire argument. While those on the pro will take it one step further, and if they hear any spoken issue, no matter how blatant or subtle it was, ignorant or not, pro is going to go right into that judgment and corrective mode. I believe our education system promotes this line of thinking as well, because we go through school and we're supposed to learn every single English rule out there, and we're expected to be experts in it in our adult lives. Pro truly does believe that there is one correct way to speak English, and in doing so, they reject, whether they want to admit it or not, they reject every single other dialect of English, which there's like almost 100 different English dialects. And to me, because we can find dialects in every single language, to me, dialects, that's what makes language so beautiful. It makes language more alive when it doesn't have to just be what we can find in the dictionary. To continue through this crossroad, both sides are going to need to be open-minded and discuss what they mean by dialect and grammar. It is crucial to know the definitions you're working with, because often this debate comes up because both sides, while they're talking about the exact same social issue, they're talking about it using different definitions. It is common that people mistakenly use the word grammar when they mean the word language. If you interchange these two, you're actually going to inadvertently remove all dialects, and for pro, that would be, in their sense, devaluing all the rest of the dialects and just elevating the academic, that proper dialect that we've been talking about this whole time. For anti to continue through this crossroad and this conversation, they're going to need to talk to pro about what is really the difference between grammar and language, and start to move dialect back in there, and so we can start to value the hundreds, literally hundreds of dialects found in English. If pro is unmoving and they are adamant that their definitions are true and that proper grammar is the only way to speak English, then they can definitely expect for the debate likely to end and anti to come right back with the pro being racist, classist, and oppressive. With the possibility of being called racist or classist looming overhead, you're probably asking yourself, when can you correct someone's grammar and not be seen as classist or racist? As that assumption generally comes from those on the anti, in this final crossroad, anti is going to need to accept that correcting one's grammar is not this inherently evil concept they believe it to be. As established in the first crossroad, anti generally has a very negative view on correcting one's grammar because they attach it to the historical period when it was just the white elites getting academics and education, and so they could easily look down upon anyone who did not have access to that. But to get through this crossroad, anti is going to need to concede that correcting one's grammar, but rather using proper grammar, helps and aids in the coherency of our larger society and in our day-to-day conversations. But most importantly, they need to stop focusing on how rude they find pro's behavior. The most adamant and passionate on the pro are likely to correct complete strangers that they just hear use something incorrectly. They'll just correct them when they're out in society. In America, yeah, that is generally viewed as rude, but in France, kind of seen as more of a helpful thing. So while our societies may vary on how kind this gesture actually is, anti is just going to have to try not to focus on their anger and their perceived disrespect. And if they can't, well, this debate's over. But if they can, they're going to have to sit down, and now we're going to have to shift over to pro, because if you follow this debate online, pro often mocks those on the anti by claiming that they are against teachers, or they are against academics, or they're against anyone who educates people on how to speak English, which is not true. Most of them don't take it that far. However, if pro cannot become open-minded and refuses to accept that anti is offering an actual general critique on how to approach society and our interactions with each other, well, then the debate's over, because pro will remain closed-minded. And again, the debate will be over if anti cannot get past their frustrations. To keep both sides at the table, we'll want to start to narrow down our conversation and just talk about those that we expect to correct our grammar. Teachers, parents, siblings, and peers are often those who are going to correct your grammar the most. In this admission is where I feel like we can find a TMF win-win. The middle ground can be found in my direct response to the last crossroad, and my answer to that is only when asked, and when asked, only within the agreed upon conditions. For example, if you know a foreign exchange student, or if you are dealing with a small child that is still learning the language, you want to sit down with them and ask when they are comfortable with you correcting them. It may be hard for pro to get used to, but uninterrupted speaking aids in fluency and coherency way more than interrupted just to fix someone's grammar. Now, it may be hard for pro, but if they can agree, this is a win-win, because pro gets to fulfill that innate desire to educate. And it's a win for anti, because they get to avoid being corrected if they don't want to. And if they agree to being corrected, they get to avoid the rudest behavior of all, those mid-sentence interruptions. Just because we have a thought in our minds does not mean that we have to speak it. And this very basic social filter is how we coexist amicably. If we go to the extreme end of pro and we abandon our filter and we just judge and correct anyone and everyone who has improper written language, whether they've misspelled a word or if they've spoken a word incorrectly, then we're only going to leave ourselves up to more judgment and more contentment. Contempt, not content. Contempt. See, it's easy to missay words that sound very similar, but to get to the middle ground, both sides are going to need to embrace their filters and not just say what's on their mind, and listen to what the other person is trying to say without interrupting them, unless interruption's what you agreed upon. Because again, you only want to correct someone's grammar if they've agreed that you can. And if both sides can agree to this, well, we can find some peace. What do you think though? Should we go with pro and insist that everyone uses proper grammar? Or should we side with anti and say, it's really not that big of a deal? Whatever you think, please join the debate in the comment section down below. Thank you very much for watching this whole episode. And now, let's wrap this episode up. Hit that notification bell to make sure you're back here in 2 weeks for possibly the most controversial topic yet. Is feminism anti-men? A huge, massive shout out to my Patreon members for helping me bring safe debates to you and everyone you disagree with. As always, this has been TMF, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the time in whatever zone you find yourself. Did-us!